out too, it says, these new media channels represent a challenge undermining traditional command and control. And so many hierarchical firms don't like social media because they lose control. But it's here to stay. It's not going away. And I suggest that what you do tonight when you get home, if you work for an organization, Google it and find out what comes up. Does your website come up first? Or does a YouTube video about your booger sandwich come up first? So the main thing is you should be starting to Google your organization every single day just to see what those top 10 lists are. Because you might find an activist group occupies the first 5, spots. So then you have to figure out how you're going to get your website on top of them. Strategy. Just to give you an example of how we're communicating now, which is the new strategy, is first of all organizational websites. Your special guest that was the head of the public relations firm talked about our work with Coca-Cola. Well, Coca-Cola does have a social media strategy. And that's to make sure they're present in every single social media forum there is. And so they have organizational websites that are different. They have organizational websites that are basically in different languages for different groups of people and different age groups doing different things. Coca-Cola also, then you have online newsrooms. Because today you don't use the mail for news releases. You use online newsrooms with links that have a video in them, that has basically where you can get other resources and all kinds of things. So this is HP's online newsroom. And this has become the workhorse of the corporation or the organization in terms of distributing information. You also have Twitter. This is Coca-Cola's Twitter account. Coca-Cola has loyal fans throughout the world. And so they have a Twitter account that they can talk about as fast food chain. Here's another blog. Blogs are kind of interesting. This is the Coca-Cola blog. Talks about the history of the company. Here's the YouTube for Coca-Cola, the number of YouTube videos they have. A totally integrated strategy. So media relations in the blogosphere. Well, now we don't only have traditional reporters, we have bloggers. And so one of the things your organization must do is establish an A group of bloggers. Bloggers that regularly cover your industry or your company or your product and have followers. Your special guest that was talking to the reporter talked about it's very hard to measure, basically social media in terms of its impact. But one of the things you can measure is basically you can measure the conversation index. If you have a blog out there and there's nobody talking on it, it's a useless blog. So you're looking at blogs that have a lot of interaction. You're looking at blogs that have a lot of comments. And you're looking at blogs that have a lot of followers. And they call them the A blogs. You need to cultivate bloggers just as carefully as you do traditional media. And the importance of blogs is that 75% of the journalists basically use blogs to get their story ideas. So what appears in a blog oftentimes goes mainstream within the media itself. Traditional media in the United States have a blog. Do most corporations in Argentina now have blogs, you think? Claudia, do they most have blogs? No? We should talk about that during discussion, perhaps. The role of blogs in a corporate structure in terms of communication. Because one of the advantages of corporate blog is it can be informal, it can be fun, it can be not as officious. Because remember that a website is very organized and very hierarchical, right? Very formal. But maybe a blog gets more coverage because it's kind of a conversation. And then there's two things we can talk about. One is, should the corporation have a blog? And if we do you write it as PR people or does somebody else write it? Or the other thing too, should employees be encouraged to blog? I talked to you about the fact that people talking one-to-one are more credible. Would you believe an employee of a corporation on a blog? Or would you believe the CEO of the company? So you have to figure out how to empower employees in the digital age. Do a content analysis of the comments, track intensity, track the A-list of bloggers, use metrics, secure domain names in your name to make sure you have domain names. And so I think, you know, as we're looking at essentially reputation in the digital age, two things you got to do. You've got to monitor, and you have to have a strategy, and you've got to embrace it because it's here. So muchas gracias for your interest.
Sobre todo cuando vamos por la edición número 28, muy difícil porque hay que renovar la expectativa todo el tiempo. Y hay mucha discusión alrededor de qué hacemos, qué no hacemos. Bueno, hoy, como vieron, empezamos y terminamos con contenidos académicos y en el medio tuvimos mucha cuestión de experiencia. El año pasado fuimos por otros lugares, el año que viene iremos por otros. No podemos hacer nada de esto sin la participación de ustedes. Yo pensaba hoy, mientras escuchaba alguna de las charlas, por ejemplo, el reportaje que le hicieron a Verónica, a Gerardo, qué bueno que hubiera sido tener algo de esto cuando yo estudiaba, allá a mediados de los 80. Aunque sea una, yo siempre escuchaba los mismos 3 o 4 que eran los que hablaban, eran muy pocos. Había poca gente haciendo este trabajo y encima no tenían mucho hábito de contar. Con lo cual es un momento para disfrutar desde el punto de vista del intercambio. Yo les quiero pedir una sola cosa. La primera es decirle, ojalá hayamos estado a la altura de las expectativas que tenían cuando empezó la mañana. Espero que sí, creo que fue bastante bueno, pero eso tiene mucho que ver con la expectativa que ustedes le pusieron. Y la segunda es, como dice la tapita, cuando no ganamos, sigan participando. ¿Sí? Es muy importante que nuestras comisiones de trabajo, que es donde el consejo se realiza, tengan mucha participación de mucha gente, porque una de las cosas que necesitamos hacer es formar y preparar y darle cabida y darle aire a la gente que va a venir en la conducción del consejo. Tenemos un consejo que anda muy bien, que tiene proyección, que tiene objetivos, que tiene cosas, pero necesita de nueva gente para que siga creciendo y siga haciendo bien las cosas. Supongo que los agradecimientos de todos los que nos ayudaron a que esto se haga hoy los va a hacer Nicolás, así que te invito a Nicolás. Gracias. Thank you, Dennis.
Yo no tengo una tablet todavía, estoy manejando el papelito, y lo voy a tomar de memoria porque la verdad es que sería un pecado no decir los nombres de todos los que nos acompañaron hoy, porque sin ellos no es posible esto. Y obviamente, como dijo Gustavo, sin ustedes tampoco. Primero, agradecer a través de Celina Caseta y a todas las autoridades de AMIA que nos han brindado este espacio. La verdad que un espacio que nos ha encantado, que nos han dado toda la ayuda, el apoyo. Ustedes vieron lo que fue montar living, videos, charlas, traducciones, con lo cual la verdad que demanda trabajo y acá lo tuvimos y fue impecable. Así que quiero agradecerle a la AMIA por el espacio.